This is your virtual tour of history stories with a few tricks and treats of McMinnville and Warren County. Park Theater opened in 1939, Bruce. October of 1939.
Yeah. October 18th of 1939, Park Theater opened Art Deco doors. They were still doing the Art Deco style. Opened those doors to a mass of humanity that bought tickets. A film was made. There is still some of that film available that we're hoping to digitize. At 6:30, 1,800 people piled into the auditorium of a 962-seat theater to see grand opening festivities. I don't know where the rest of the people sat, but good luck to them.
You know, I heard over 2,000 people went in Travis's Grill next door and had supper.
It's amazing. 6:30 till midnight, a 40-seat restaurant. It was a sandwich shop, actually, the most modern of its kind, with all that Art Deco styling. If you know anything about art and understand that term, it had to be a grand place. Back in the mid-1930s, Tony Sudicum of Crescent Amusement Company out of Nashville got with a Mr. Hill out of Tullahoma and became president of Cumberland Amusement Company as well. And he had the grand idea of building a bigger movie theater here in McMinnville.
My name is Crystal. I'm the president of Heritage Alliance. This is Bruce. He's one of our board members here. You can see the museum behind us with special hours.
Okay, we're open on Saturdays, which is a big day especially for the kids out of school and whatnot, 10 o'clock till about 2 in the afternoon. We're also currently open on Sundays beginning at 2 o'clock till about 6 in the afternoon, and Tuesdays and Thursdays 2 to 6. By special appointments, and we also do tours and other things just by giving us a call and setting that up.
We are completely volunteer. Any opportunities that we have for volunteers, we're always reaching out. If you're interested in volunteering, please see myself or Bruce or any other board member.
And during much discussion and interest, a theater was built here.
Now, Bruce, didn't we have other theaters on McMinnville at that time?
We had
on Main Street?
There was a lot of that took place on Main Street. You had Dixie Theater, which opened, we talked about a murder just a little bit ago in our show. The house where Fletch Woodard lived eventually gave way to Maxwell Hotel, and that hotel was showplace for the original Dixie Theater that moved next door to First National Bank in one of their buildings that they owned. On down further down the street was originally Star Theater for what was then thought of as the black community, because there was all this segregation and people just couldn't be friends. And Count Odom, that was part of Cumberland Amusement Company, saw the benefit in things and bought that out, and all three theaters are now owned under the watchful eye of Tony Sudicum and Count Odom of Cumberland Amusement Company.
Now, Park Theater was part of that segregation that had two separate entrances, right?
Back in the good old days, as Park Theater was constructed, as we talked about, 962 seats, a double balcony. The lower half of the balcony was for the white visitors. The upper balcony was for the black visitors, with a separate entrance to the right-hand side of where the ticket window is today, next door to what is now Diamond Jewelry Company.
Right.
And what a lot of people didn't know was an apartment / office was upstairs in Park Theater, but the upstairs apartment office was actually inside the balcony. So Count Oldham is the person that was sneaking up, and you'd hear tapping under your feet and this and that and the other during certain movies when people were a little bit rowdy, and they calmed them down, did stuff. And that was mild compared to some of the tricks and pranks and things that he did. Do you remember what he said once?
He said, I never pulled a prank on anyone I didn't like.
And that was true. Tennessean did a big story on him, and he outlined that it was always friends or so-called friends that he did these things. One of the most remembered stories, at some point in time, a Dr. Perry that was part of the Photographers Club here back in the 50s had bought one of the new shiny Volkswagen Beetles and talked about how grand it was and oh, how great the gas mileage. And Count Oldham, let's just see how good a gas mileage that thing really gets. And one of his boys from the theater would slip every night to Perry's driveway and fill the gas tank. And he was getting excellent mileage. After so many weeks of time, the guy would go back and start siphoning out gas so that the car didn't have enough gas hardly to start. Well, I thought you had a good car there. Yeah. He was also a big prankster with other people and did a lot of things. A couple of stories. There's one story that's never been verified. Our High's funeral home that we plan to do a story on at some point was operated by John W. High about 1926. And the original High's funeral home, which is encased inside the building that's there now, was just a residence with John High living there. And he just recently sowed his yard down with beautiful grass in the hopes it would do well. And the worst trick you can pull on anyone with a nice lawn is to plant turnip greens. Somebody planted turnip greens all in that lawn one night. It was always accused on Count Oldham, but we're not sure. But the worst thing that happened with John High and Count Oldham, at some point, Oldham slips to one of the theaters in Cookville, one of the other towns, and watches one of those naughty movies never showed at Park Theater, and goes in, shakes hands with the manager, and who are you? And he says, I'm John High, I'm a mortician from McMinnville, and goes on about his business and come back home. And at some point, word gets out that John High has been watching X-rated movies, and the guys that worked for Count Oldham at the theater said they heard the doors open and John High yelling Count Oldham's name very loudly, hunting him throughout the course of that theater the next morning.
Oh my.
A lot of things.
You know, I heard that there was a fire in 1947.
Yeah, the building burned in 1947 as well here at the Park Theater. In addition to the pranks and things, there were a lot of serious things that went on. And in the month of September, on a Wednesday, a fire started on the stage area, electrical. And oddly, there's a book that may still be available that was surveyed the year before that showed pictures of the three theaters we talked about, photographs of inside, what they all look like. And I've always wondered why that was done just months before a fire happened. It's always made me wonder about things, you know, kind of that ghost story-ish. Did somebody set their own building on fire? But I kind of doubt it.
I doubt that.
But in the result of all things, the fire burned for about 3.5 hours and destroyed a big part of what was inside the theater. The side of the building where we are here was home to Travis Grill originally. It was at this time home to Crouch Drugstore. The other side was the Serve-All restaurant offering 5-cent hamburgers. Can you imagine that one? And those two businesses didn't sustain a lot of damage, and so after about a day of shutdown and cleanup, they were ready to open. But it took about 6 months from April till July of the next year, 15th of 1948, to redo the theater, complete with a new interior, brand new marquee, the same marquee that we see behind us today. And it opened to a grand audience. The seating had been expanded to 1,500 seats, and the original 1939 grand opening movie was shown after people bought their tickets to come in and see the festivities that night, along with movies and other things that took place. So it was a grand adventure yet again.
So what happened to Park Theater? Why did it close down?
Good question. Did anybody in our listening audience ever buy a VCR and go to the rental place? You didn't buy a ticket at Park Theater, did you? It closed.
Bruce, I've never heard of a VCR.
Good.
What's a VCR?
Do your homework. VCR, the tapes that you install into a little box that replaces the DVDs of our day. But if the older ones of our listening audience ever bought VCR tapes or rented them instead of going to Park Theater, you helped close it. And the change in times, people were looking for different things, multiplex theaters versus the single movie house, so that mom could watch one movie while dad and the kids watched Ghostbusters or whatever it was on the other screen. And so just a lot of different things, but that's one of the things that literally brought an end to the single screen theaters, was that little box that we've all come to know and understand, and now it's DVD players and digital downloads.
Blu-ray.
And Blu-ray.
All right, so that shut down Park Theater.
Park Theater shut down 1986.
So in the 90s, was it just dormant?
Park Theater closed in 1986 on a Thursday night right before the fair was to start on the weekend in September. Transformers was the last movie officially shown at Park Theater when it closed, the original Transformers movie. A few months after, it reopened to show some that were contracted to be run, and the only place to show them was Park Theater. The last one was My Little Pony. It closed, and it sat for a few years. It was bought by Jerry Williamson that transformed it into Social Security offices, so the 18-karat gold, beautiful, decorative interior was trashed by Social Security offices, being built in a box style right down the middle of the auditorium.
Now, Bruce, I remember going there as a kid, and I've never seen a grand theater. All I remember is seeing is cubicles.
Well, that's what it was. It was just a big box that had been slid like a Velveeta cheese box being installed into a bigger box. And the remains of the theater was still on the outside. You could go and flip some old switches from 1948.
When did it open back?
Well, around the year 1998, I got started with Heritage Alliance. And within a short time, Heritage Alliance had created a committee called Main Street McMinnville. And Main Street McMinnville was to be the revitalization effort of downtown McMinnville. Heritage Alliance is supposed to preserve all of Warren County history, so the committee spun off and became a nonprofit. And within a short time, another committee formed out of Main Street McMinnville, the Park Theater Group. And this was the early 2000s. And so within a short time, Pam Pallis, Sandra Haynes, and several others that were also part of this group, Dan Gray from Main Street McMinnville, myself, and several of the Heritage Group, saw the vision to trying to talk the city into, can we buy the Park Theater and renovate it? Can we buy it back? The magic's still there. We got to climb around that box and see what was left of it, and there was enough left that someone thought it was worth saving.
I'm glad they did.
Purchase was made within a short time. People even in wheelchairs were in there helping rip out Social Security offices and eliminating everything that had been that part of the history, including a picture of Tom Selleck that some of the ladies had in their parts of the offices. And in the course of time, it sat dormant again, and it took a bunch of kids with Future History Committee and several others pushing and talking and doing some things to convince the city and the citizens that Park Theater was the best way to start bringing tourism back to McMinnville. Someone finally bought into the idea. A few $1 million later, money is invested. Workers are brought in that know what they're doing. Cook Signs out of Tullahoma relights the marquee. And on May 16th of 2015, all-day events and a ribbon cutting reopened Park Theater. The House Beautiful, as it was called.
You know, I was here that night, and we had the Jackson Street Band on stage, and it was just beautiful.
Jackson Street Band is from Tullahoma all day long. The high school choir, glee club performed. We had live bands throughout the day, different ones. I remember seeing some of the members of the Middle Tennessee Songwriters Group performing, Nick Bolden and his group, and several others performed over the course of time. And there's some of those pictures still available from that. And Park Theater, it's hope, now that the marquee has been relit to be the beacon of downtown, will be here for generations to come to entice people to come here and experience history, like the ghost stories, like the tall tales that we sometimes have. The stories of Fletch Woodard are so far from where we are now that we're not really sure how true or how false certain things are. And he was called the most hated man in McMinnville at that time, but very few people know about him because of so far in history, and that's why we're doing what we're doing here today.
Yeah. So what can you go to Park Theater and see now? Can I go watch a movie?
Well, at some point it's hoped we can show movies again. That's under negotiation, but the main purpose of Park Theater now is a live arts theater. You're going to go there and see the best concerts ever, live comedians. We just had local homeboy T.C. Cope come back from Nashville and put on a great show with Janet Williams. We've got Etta May, the comedian, and this is perfect for Park Theater. 80th anniversary of Park Theater coming up, and in honor of Count Odom and all his antics, we've got Etta May, the comedian, coming to entertain us. Live music concerts. Big Smo has been there. The Glenn Miller Orchestra. That's a big deal to get the Glenn Miller Orchestra in McMinnville. The Navy Sea Chanters. That was an amazing show for those that were there that night. So just a lot of live things, plays from the Dream Reality Group. Main Street McMinnville is partnering with Park Theater Group to have children's theater where they're teaching the kids acting and doing all these things. So just a lot of amazing stuff going on at Park Theater.
You know, I'd even heard that Dottie West has been on that stage.
Yeah, Dottie West was on that stage back in the good old days. It was a live venue. You had all the stars of the Grand Ole Opry from the 40s and 50s perform live, and during that same time period, a bunch of kids from Central High School graduated on that stage, walked across and got their diploma and went on to do great things. One of those kids was Dorothy Marie Marsh, later known as Dottie West.
So interesting. Well, there's so much opportunity that Park Theater has brought McMinnville and Warren County.
Just a lot of amazing things. It's been the house beautiful for years. It's a story center where people have come and watched movies that were fiction or real based on someone's life. Buford Pusser, the Walking Tall series, was a real story that was shown on Park Theater screen, but he came and autographed here right along with some of the other movie stars as their movies premiered back in the day. And Margaret came and visited at one point when all the Elvis movies were coming out. And yes, Elvis was in the building, along with Brenda Lee and other celebrities at the time. And at some point, due to some finagling, the last months of Marilyn Monroe's life, she made a pit stop in McMinnville and visited our house beautiful, the Park Theater as we call it.
All right. So, do you think Calvin Odom's got any tricks to play on these guests?
Oh, he's still playing tricks. I was the kid that was decorating the poster windows until the renovation started. And on one of those nights, here's the little sign that says coming soon. Great, I'm gonna put this in the window. And he'd written something on the back of it in a handwritten form because he didn't have enough signs and he wanted to save money. And what he'd written on back was upside down, unknowns to me. And when I get it all fixed just perfect, shut the door, well, he pulled another one. Coming soon was upside down. He never stops.
Well, we'd like to thank you for taking the time out to listen to the stories between Bruce and myself. Stay tuned for future videos.